The time is 6:01 p.m. I call this meeting of Godley Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Let the record show that we have a quorum of members present. This meeting has been duly called. Notice this meeting has been posted in accordance with the text of the Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, I'd like to call on the GMS 8th grade, student Campbell Armstrong to offer the invitation.
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather together about the events and about the ISD. Thank you for each individual and give them wisdom on how to continue to make Godley ISD the place that you live. We ask that you clear our minds and our hearts from negativity that we might face and address them with wisdom and help us engage in words of reflection and allow us to grow closer as we community. Thank you for all that you do in Jesus' name.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we'll conduct the pledges, and we have the GMS Sports Squad.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. And next, we'll move into superintendent reports. We'll move into public participation. At this time, we extend the opportunity for the public participation portion of this meeting in compliance with Section 551.007 of the Texas Government Code. We have one individual signed up to address the board tonight. Public participation provides the general public the opportunity to address the board regarding topics listed on the agenda. Persons attending the meeting and wishing to participate in the public forum must complete a sign-up form and submit the form to the board secretary or designate 10 minutes prior to the meeting being convened. Each individual addressing the board will have 3 minutes to make their presentation. Personal attacks on district employees or students will not be allowed. All participants are expected to speak with respect and civility and maintain a calm, professional demeanor. Upon the expiration of the 3 minutes, I'll call the next person. If there's only one person, please note that the meeting night does not require the board to respond to any comments or complaints from a member of the public regarding an agenda item. We will now begin the public forum. Ms. Godley will keep the time, and we have Nova Olson wishing to speak on item 8C. Ms. Godley will notify when you have 1 minute remaining. Your time will begin now.
So my concern is that this long-range facility planning committee didn't speak on or even ask the right questions. If the ISD prioritizes education, and I mean education, critical education like math and reading, then actual classrooms would have been prioritized to be built. Not a stadium, not worthless open spaces where kids can sit on their devices, and not a basketball arena. We don't need an elementary school to look, or other schools, and for that matter, to look like college campuses. When we look at other countries who are doing much, much better academically than the U.S., their facilities are simple, unpretentious, and functional. They have actual books, not laptops, apps, and endless tech. So that's my concern. Not the fact that we would build buildings for more kids. It's the fact that we are overspending. You don't need a BMW when a Camry will do just fine. Just like any other government entity, public education spending is out of control, and Godley is no exception. They spend more per student than even large districts, and yet do not deliver better results. And why is our district continuously paying the salesman to sell their product? Godley ISD has spent many tens of thousands. In fact, for the only documents that we can get thus far, $115,000, this district has paid Huckabee and Macedonia to push this bond. There's no return on investment for education on paying the salesman to hawk their product. Meanwhile, good teachers, who should be making six figures, by the way, get the short end of the stick every time.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Oh, and fun fact, this bond is actually basically the same as the last one. Actually, it's 4. Divide $889 million for 9 years, divide that by 3, it's $296 million. This is $365 million for 3 years. That's essentially more than they were asking for on the last. Joshua ISD has doubled enrollment and only asked for $107 million. And we're transparent with the public to say that that rate, their tax rate, would go up 17 cents. So those are the questions that should have been asked. Fiscal responsibility, which I said over and over and over, and transparency.
Next, we'll move into campus spotlight, and we have the Godley Middle School, Mr. Frazier.
All right, Mr. Frazier. Talk to us about the middle school.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to highlight the wonderful students and staff at Godley Middle School. So first, we'd like to start with talking about something that is near and dear to our hearts, and that is community-based accountability system. So our community-based accountability system team, our CBAS team, we have regularly scheduled meetings once a week, and we dive into what the school's needs are, our progress towards our current goals, what our future goals might be, and looking back at past goals and seeing if we're still maintaining. So out of our discussions about CBAS, I'd just like to talk to you about some of the things that have directly been a result of our conversations. So first of all, from pillar 1, student learning and progress, we have decided, based upon those costs, to allow teachers to have a common planning time. So that means teachers get their common experience with other teachers that teach the same subjects in the same grade level, so they're able to talk to each other on a daily basis and plan those lessons on a daily basis. We also have started our professional learning communities, also known as PLCs. So we have those also scheduled regularly, but we're trying to be cognizant of teachers' time, so we understand that they have a 45-minute class period and conference period, so we do try to limit pulling them away from their precious planning time as well. But in those meetings, we do focus on the fundamental 5, which is our instructional practices, what we're focusing on as a district, and talking about how we can improve our student instruction. Also, pillar 2 is student readiness. So, for the past couple of years, we have provided every student a planner, and with those planners, our elective courses are giving direct instruction on how to follow the planners, how to effectively manage your own time as a student, what to write down, when to write it down, how to write it down, to be able to keep up with your work, and all those different important things that are coming up. And then all of our classes work on effective note-taking skills, working with students to be able to decipher the important information that they need to take note of. And I would like to say thank you, school board, for allowing us to add our leadership class position. So that is the first year that we have that. Very, very good stuff. And that, the students are able to start looking at their own study habits and their own needs, and also take a peek at their career, maybe what they want to start doing, start getting their interest surveys done, so they don't have to pay for it, get to the career next class. They're going to have a letter, this is what I want to start getting into this morning. So very, very well for that class as well. For pillar 3, our media class, they actually create a slideshow and our announcements. They have announcements every day that they highlight to the students. We have a weekly slideshow on students' events and accomplishments throughout the week. People throughout the day. And then our community partnerships. So for the parents, there's been a huge addition. We're very, very proud of how our coaches, our school leaders, our band directors, our sponsors, our teachers, everyone is so proud about being able to use this to communicate with our parents. It's very good, efficient, and also with the students. We also have newsletters, which highlights upcoming events. I like to offer a little bit of encouragement and maybe some positivity in there. Let's follow them on. Highlights positivity. Good information, helpful information for parents to be able to successfully navigate homeschool. For example, this past month, how to use it, and help you not just check your student's grade, but it'll let you know your student's work. It'll let you know your student's things like that. So we put that in there. And of course, our professional learning is I mentioned the book study that we did, our undefined revisited book study, our focus on our PLC around that. We also had an intentional effort with our professional development this year, not only in-house, we work well with our facilitators learning, and we work well with our curriculum department. We're trying to get our own in-house professional development, but we also are looking for the outside. We're looking for really good ideas that are really impactful for the immediate, right here, right now. What can we, as a teacher, what can I do to improve my instruction? So we have a focus effort on that as well. And then, of course, in safety and well-being, we highlight the character traits of the month and the student slideshow and the announcements. Mrs. Fitz, our counselor, is phenomenal about getting into classrooms. She's going in there and teaching positive character traits, talking to the students about being a good person overall, helping the uplifting in that way. Mrs. Trussell does our positive office referrals, so she's doing a lot of negative office referrals, if you want to call it that. So she said, I want to do positive office referrals. I want the teachers to highlight good things. Thank you so much to Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen has given us coupons. So they say, hey, congratulations on good behavior. We've actually, so many of these positive office referrals, we've gone back twice now. That's Dairy Queen for a coupon. And they're very willing to work with us and give us this week. So we're thankful for that. And then, of course, out of our safety and well-being pillar comes our Hope Squad, who you've already seen earlier tonight for pledges. So our Hope Squad, they hosted just a couple weeks ago what we call the Great Kindness Challenge, actually a nationwide thing, where every day there was a different incentive, a different idea, a different theme to let's be kind to somebody. Pick someone new to sit with at lunch. Smile at someone. Say hi to someone that you don't normally talk to. Things like that. To get this goal encouraged and invigorated to just be a kind person. Now these students, they're picked by their peers as someone that they can be trusted to talk to. It's a very impressive organization. It's very, very nice to me. These are the people that their own peers, middle school students, say, if I have an issue, these are the people that I know I can talk to. And these students and parents should be very proud of that station. There's also training on a regular basis. They meet to a statewide conference in October. They've done great stuff. So at this time, I would like to pause a little bit and have these students recognized with all of you for a picture. So, thank you.
meeting. I put him on the spot last week, talking about Hope Squad. I don't have to, don't want to, we just want to hear from you guys. Who's the biggest talker? I know you guys are all talkers. What do you like about Hope Squad?
I like that book, so I encourage students to reach out to people for their age and give them a possibility.
Do you feel like it's having a positive effect on the campus? What do you think is one of the biggest outcomes that one of the biggest positive changes that's happening in Coach life?
I feel like some people have a lot of answers and have a positive attitude.
Good. Do you guys have anything to add? I know you want to talk, Charlie. What do you like about Coach Squad?
I like that it encourages students to be kinder to other people and just try to talk out their problems instead of bottling it up and ending up listening to someone and I like that it's help people to do and resolutions when they are okay to talk to someone and it's okay.
It's helping with, things like bullying and that sort of thing. Anybody else? You say that, who are you going to talk to?
What I like about Hope Squad is that it spreads positivity and kindness all around the school to people who might not get as much as other people. And I think it made a really positive impact on the people who have trouble at home maybe or are like thinking negative thoughts about themselves and that just even smiling at someone can change how the world works.
That's awesome.
So again, I'm very, very proud and pleased with these students, very grateful for their efforts. I'm grateful for Mrs. Fisk and Mrs. Rollins, two of our sponsors, we have other sponsors as well, but they're the city of the insurance. So we are very proud, like one more applause for them. Okay, so moving along, I'd like to kind of introduce you to our different departments, introduce you to our staff members, and let you know who's working directly with us on a daily basis. So this is our office staff. We are the front lines of the school, is what we call this group of people. When you come to the school, these are the people that you're going to see. These are the people that you're going to talk to when you call up there. And we preach and we teach customer service all the time. One of our sayings that came out of a book study is everyone's a custodian. There's nothing too good for anyone to do. So answer the phone, be polite. We teach them group set, and these people here can identify that. I'm very proud of them. Our custodians, whoa, they work incredibly hard. They work so hard to keep our building clean, to keep it sanitized. I don't know if you ever cleaned up after 12, 13-year-olds. It's a challenge sometimes. So they do a great job. They're always willing to help, to drop what they're doing. They help. So if you got some new furniture or whatever, they don't want to scratch their freshly waxed floors, so they're going to come help you pick it up and move it. So they're going to help you do whatever needs to be done. They're phenomenal group of employees. Our food service people. So they're at school before the crack of dawn, making sure that our students get fed. They're cooking the meals, they're doing all the stuff. They stay open late after breakfast hours to feed our 7th grade athletes. They're out there at practice and they miss that normal breakfast. they stay open off that breakfast opportunity. They're just such a hardworking group of individuals that do so much behind the scenes that they don't get the recognition they need for it either. So we're very proud of our good service. So then moving to our behavior and instructional support. So these people, they help teachers in a variety of different ways. They're academic support for students, concept mastery, student needs help with the classes that they go in there. They get the assistance that they need. They offer instructional strategies and tips and practices for teachers to help improve that instruction. And then they have the behavior intervention as well for those kiddos that need a little cooling down time. So coping strategies with their emotions that sometimes they run high. And our CLI, our Center for Learning and Innovation, these two ladies have done amazing work to get students engaged in a bunch of different learning opportunities. So they've created really a safe haven for students to enjoy learning experiences and a bunch of different things. You go in there, there's also some students with puzzles, board games, and they really created a culture of I just want to go there and check out that area. They do really neat activities to get students interested in coming to the CLI. They had an activity, guess the number of pumpkins. They had that for October, so students put in there and check the pumpkins and look at that. They had a school-wide turkey scavenger. The turkeys are really cool. Students who want to scavenger get the turkeys and we can get the turkey from the CLI and just all the prize. They had cookie decorating before Christmas. That was really neat. They recently made bracelets, and they're about to host for Valentine's Day a blind date with a book. So that'll be interesting to see. They do really good stuff. All of these things are getting the students into the CLI around that learning environment and really cool stuff. And next is our paraprofessionals. So these people are the lifeline of the school. We could not function on a daily basis without our paraprofessionals. They just flat out don't know what their days are going to entail. From covering classes to launching rockets to solving inequalities to writing essays to identifying the different kinds of barbed wire in Texas history. They help the students with anything and everything. They never say no. They see me coming, they might hide behind their desk, and how we know what. They're just so helpful to our students and to our staff. They are just the epitome of team players. They're great. Wonderful. Moving to our electives courses, kind of included them all together. I would call these people the most flexible on campus. They adapt and they overcome to whatever life throws at them. From moving classrooms in the middle of the year to just flat out not having a classroom at all and floating around and having what's affectionately referred to as a cow. You can see a picture there. Classroom on wheels, cow. So they're really good, adaptable people that, again, their heart is in it with the kids. That's what they come for. They're going to do this best with the kids, no matter what it takes. These classes, they're impact to the fields, right? They're very large classes, but that speaks to the fact that students, they want to be in that art class. They want to be in the theater class. They want to be in band. That's awesome. So some examples of what these people have done. In art, they went around, don't get any more hands-on experience. They went around town and painting businesses' windows for Christmas, right? So there's not much hands-on that you can get from that. We also do offer a high school credit art class, so one section is high school credit that allows students to get their high school fine art credit in middle school, so that they're able to pursue maybe art, maybe other things, but careers that elected in high school to further their passion. So we're pleased to offer that. And theater, they recently completed a one-act play. A couple of students come home with some all-star cast. So we're proud of that. They've also put a public performance with that. So it was really good stuff going on in theater. In band, we recently had 22 students make the all-region band, which is a huge number. That's a huge accomplishment. That's great. Our careers class, I mentioned them earlier, getting students ready for the next level. One of the neatest things that they do is they bring in community members, business leaders, and they conduct mock interviews with 8th graders. Every 8th grader fill out an application, they have a resume ready to go, they actually interview with an actual professional. Now, at the end of the day, they pass out this year that we're able to split up our technology class. It's one semester and leadership is one semester. So in technology, they're looking at the basics of computer programming. So really some of the neat things that they've done is they created an escape room, a digital escape room. They compete that to see who does the one that's the most successful. And then our 8th grade technology classes, we started digital media and robotics classes this year. So again, thank you for that opportunity. Mr. Lawson teaches those. He does a great job of aligning his digital media and robotics class with what they're going to need in high school. So he's already looking ahead to, this is what you're going to need, this is your foundation. He's done a great job of getting that work to that. And we're pleased to offer 2 more high school credit classes in Spanish and Ag. So in Spanish, they do so much hands-on stuff. They use real, actual conversational Spanish. It's really neat to go in there, and I learned more Spanish sitting in a 45-minute observation than I did in 3 years when I was in high school. So she did a great job. And then Ag, of course, they do so much neat stuff. Again, it frees up opportunities for them to further develop full design, all the leadership opportunities. We've got 8th graders that have been to state to compete for leadership events. So it's a really good opportunity and great for all of those students and employees. Reading and writing. So our writing classes, one neat thing that they've done is they actually wrote letters. They've done this for a couple of years now. Wrote letters to veterans, and we've actually hosted a Veterans Day program where we've had different veterans come and speak to students throughout the day about their experiences. And I am going to brag on the writing class a little bit. And the 7th grade writing students, they had 33% of them grew by over 3 times their expected growth measure on that test. So from September to December, they grew by 3 times what was expected. That's 1/3 of them. 50% of those students grew by over twice their expected growth measure, and 67% of the students in the 7th grade writing class met their growth measure and exceeded it by a significant margin. So we're very happy with the writing classes. I will tell you, they worked really hard in there, and it's not their favorite class. So they're doing a great job of their efforts. These people consistently have things forward. They work really, really well together to integrate other disciplines into their curriculum. We often see our reading classes go talk to our social studies classes about what they're studying, and they'll pick them up on and compare us the lessons and what they're doing in their class based on that. So speaking of social studies, this group of people, man, they have fully embraced the fundamental 5. They do a great job of getting students to think at a really high level with their questions. They do a really good job of knowing what kind of questions to ask, more than just your standard why did this happen? The student might be able to tell me how to stand back, but why? What effect did this have? They've done peer-to-peer purposeful talk in the hallway. That's a really good thing to see. Students line up, they're facing each other in the hallway. They have to answer their question. One student's speaking, one student's listening, and then they rotate. Really, really cool to see. They have a map out of the wrestling that was actually drawn by students in the U.S. Hand drawn, free-form by the students. Great work. But they go and they utilize that map to have really good discussions and physical activity incorporated with social studies. And of course, they display work all the time for students to see their handiwork out in the hall. And then in math, man, these people do a really good job of getting hands-on experience as well. They use these tiles in the hallway, so they set up like a coordinate grid. So students go out there and actually plot points using the tiles in the hallway. It's really ingenious way of using the building there. They're really great collaborators. All the students know, hey, if my teacher is missing, if my teacher's sick, or whatever it is, I can go to any other math teacher and it will not turn me away. So that's really great. And again, we do offer one more high school credit course that is algebra. So to give those honor students a chance to be able to further their math career, go beyond more in high school. We're pleased to be able to offer that as an opportunity. And then last but not least, our science classes. Ben, you talked about hands-on. So we've dissected frogs, we've launched rockets, we've built models of tectonic plates and the earth layers. We've built models of DNA. We have reports and models examples of natural disasters. We've done experiments demonstrating physical and chemical changes, also known as lighting stuff on fire. The one really cool thing that we see is called the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. If you walk down the halls of the middle school, you'll see student hands, turning out they're on in color. That's the brightness and the heat of the stars. So students get that chance to know where that started in that diagram. And of course, the upcoming solar eclipse. This is Pinkerton and Mississippi. This is Dune and this is Underwood. They're doing a really good job trying to find safe ways for students to see that solar eclipse that's for sure. So much hands-on quality experience from this department and from all departments. Again, I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to share some of the things that are going on in Godley Middle School, and most importantly, thank you to our students and to our staff for putting forth the hard work, the intentional effort to grow, to improve. I'm so proud of these people. I'm so proud to say that I am a genius.
If you're a staff member at GMS, can you please get up? That's the Sunday on that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right, next we'll move into business items, and 8A is we'll consider consent agenda items. Just one item, and it's the minutes of the regular meeting, January 22, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Also,
Thank you.
A motion by Craig, a second by Terry. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. 8B, we'll consider and take action on an order calling the Godley ISD School Board Trustee election for places 1, 2, and 3 in the district on May 4th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to order the calling of the Godley ISD School Board Trustee election for places 1, 2, and 3 in the district on May 4th, 2024. I'll second.
A motion by Terry, a second by Marissa. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir. Great. Will we anticipate holding this jointly with Godley City as we've done in the past? Thank you. Yes.
We do have a requirement to hold it jointly with a political subdivision, and the city has agreed to do that, and our requirement is at least the minimum to have a polling location at them on election day, and that's what we're kind of trying to do with that, with the Capitol Pavilion on election day. So everything will be separate except for the location.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. 8C will consider and take action on an order calling an election in the district on May 4th, 2024. Before we get started on that, I know we have quite a few long-range facility planning committee members that have shown up tonight. I'd like if you're here and you were on that committee, if you'll stand and be recognized. Appreciate all the hard work that they all put into that. If there's any of you that were on the committee that would like one last opportunity to address the board, I'll allow a few minutes here if anyone would like to do that.
Or if you've got any clarification as we're talking up here, we would.
Hello. Just a quick brainstorming discussion real fast. I'll be brief. It sounded like I was very encouraged during all those meetings to identify what the bare minimum our community would stand on approving. And we really, I thought, focused on the needs. So it's a little discouraging for you to not support it now. And what I wanted to clarify was the amount. It sounded like, based on what you approved and what you voted to approve to the committee, it changed on that last meeting that you were not able to attend. For that reason alone, is that the reason that you feel that you cannot support it at this time?
I would like to say that I never said I did not support it. I'm going to be very careful what I say from here. I do not want to electioneer one way or the other from the district resources, which is the STIs here. I did ask for clarification at the last meeting for the increase in cost for the bond. From the last meeting I attended was $324, and then it went up to $355. Wasn't at that meeting, but I did hear the reason for that. So I don't think that was a fair question to say I didn't support it. That was one of my concerns. And then obviously I've been very vocal that another concern of mine was the fact that the public was not allowed to attend those meetings. Everyone knows I'm a very big advocate for open government. And so that was my main concern.
Sure. I guess I'll rephrase. To not supporting it, but maybe with you being a member of the committee and voting that was the projects that we agreed to were the necessity for the district at this time, that you voted for that, and that you supported that, and the amount changed. And I felt like that when we had previous conversations, it sounded as if that amount change is an issue that you have. So that's what I was trying to understand, like from a committee, if we need to brainstorm that amount prior to you guys voting, if it's not too late.
Like I said, I wasn't at the meeting. I understand that Huckabee said it had to do with bonding capacity. I think I would have had some additional input at that meeting that I wasn't able to attend regarding that. But I think my questions were answered regarding that was the need for the escalated cost.
Yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to get at. Is I just didn't want us in a position where if you felt like you approved that smaller amount, or that you could support that smaller amount, and that smaller amount, we don't have the financial capacity to initiate those projects right out of the gate. And it puts us in a position that we don't have the financial capacity to fund those projects, but that was the amount that you approved. We kind of be in a financially compromised position. So that was the reason for the escalation. So I didn't know if that's what I was wanting clarification. If we were better off being in a financially compromised position, or having that extra escalation as a buffer when those projects can start, whether it be 2, 3, 4 years, and to have that escalation accounted for up front, being the more responsible option from those two. That's kind of what I wanted to clarify.
It would have been nice if Huckabee would have done the research on our bonding capacity before that original final meeting, because that was what that number did go into the vote that everyone compromised on. So that would have been nice for them to have done that legwork ahead of time, because I know a lot of people here are concerned with cost, and that does impact some decisions for a lot of people. So that would have been nice to have that last fourth meeting.
Sure. Okay. That's fair. I was a big supporter of us being financially responsible, so I felt like that escalation made sense. It gave us the ability to be financially responsible and account for that escalation and do those projects that we actually have the financial capacity to pay for them, and not prematurely. So that's all I wanted just to clarify and strategize there for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And just to clarify real quick, it wasn't Huckabee that informed us of the escalation. That would be our financial advisor. And Huckabee would have they didn't know what the final recommendation was going to be, so they couldn't have done the research, because we didn't know what it was going to be. So once we had the final committee, that final recommendation, we went and ran the traps and got with our financial advisor, and that's when that all came out. So we couldn't have had that number before.
So I was at that meeting, the meeting that we
address the increase in cost. So if there's any specific questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. I understand what you're saying right here. I tend to agree with Ms. Lang that it would have been nice to know on some of those costs. I think the big issue came down to the increase in cost because of the timeline. And obviously, if the bonding capacity increases faster than what the projections are, I think we budgeted mid-level growth, or conservative, something like that. So, if the growth happens at a higher rate than what we projected conservative, those costs would actually be closer to the 325 or whatever it was, as opposed to what 355. It really is a timeliness issue. And so, when we were in that meeting, the question was, should we change the proposal based on this change in numbers? Because we didn't have the full committee at that meeting, we didn't feel it was appropriate to change something that, 50 plus people had voted on when not everybody was there. So, in terms of the actual cost, it seems to be a timeliness issue. It doesn't seem to be a we're holding part without the numbers type of issue. Now it's a whole lot more than what we projected. My only, I guess, charge to you guys, since I'm not at that, is as these projects come on board, do everything in the power to make sure that we're getting the best value we can. Can we build this in a nice manner, in a quality manner, that, we don't cost so much, I'll do this, or this. Let's not be slaves to the master plan. Everything on that list was something that was needed, and it's needed now. I understand that the timeline appears to be kind of stretched depending upon which projects you take first. But all of these are necessities. Everything on that bond proposal that had been through the committee meeting was something that everyone looked at and said, what do we need right now? And this is what we need right now, is what's on that list. And so, I don't know if it's possible to drive those numbers down. That's not my job. But if it is, I would urge the board to do everything they can that, hey, maybe we don't, I'm going to go back to the auditorium because I love it, please don't hurt it. Maybe we don't put laser lights and a smoke machine in there. I don't know if that's involved in it or not, but, maybe we take, reasonable looks at what is included in these facilities before we actually start breaking ground. I understand for a bond purpose, you got to go, you got to project, and that's what the bond is. It's a projection. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend $355 million. It doesn't mean that you're going to get all these projects under $355 million. It's a projection. And so I understand that you got to do the best that you can do. One other issue I'd like to address, and then I'll stop and ask you a question. Beat up on me if you want to. But I would ask to not split the bond. I think if you split the bond, you are killing the smaller bond. I think the natural inclination for people is to look at it and say, okay, here's a 275, here's a 75, something like that. Okay, I'll give you something, but I'm not going to give you everything. I think if you split the bond, you're going to hurt those other projects that are split. I understand why. I understand the reasoning behind why you propose that. But I think it's going to be really easy for people to gang up on that lower amount. The alternative is, let's say they vote for the lower amount, we still need an elementary school. And so they won't be able to do And so I think if we're picking and choosing, splitting the bond is going to hurt the overall package. It's going to hurt the committee's recommendations. The committee voted on everything in that proposal. If I had to, you're asking me, and this is very not the board or not the committee or the group. If we need to save some money, I would say let's not pay the parking lot. Let's build a theater or an auditorium that we don't have. We need to save some money. Let's not build the locker room for the tennis courts. Let's have an auditorium that every kid can use. If we need to save some money, let's look at some of these other items that maybe don't touch everyone, or maybe something that we already have. I'm going to really upset some people when I say this because they're dear friends of mine, but we have a wonderful ag facility right now, a beautiful ag facility, fantastic. We don't have an auditorium. And so if we're cutting and we're trying to get under some magical number, maybe we put the ag facility on the next line. Because we've got an ag facility, we don't have an auditorium, we don't have another elementary school. So that's just me. That obviously doesn't represent the committee as a whole. And I don't mean to encourage it. So that's my piece. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to.
I do have a question for you, sir.
Yep.
So the total 355 does not give you heartburn as a number of the whole, not to break down of what it's for. Just if you're going to the polls, good citizen here, you're a voting citizen, so 355 doesn't bother you.
No, and I can say that without reservation because it's not the number I'm looking at. It's what's in the number. I mean, I know you're saying, hey, just look at it as 355. Does that bother you? Well, if it was 355 for,
Or 290.
yeah, or 290. But if it was, hey, it's going to be 290 so that they can build a pool with like fireworks shooting out of it. Well, yeah, I'm against that. But if it's 290 with a new elementary school and an auditorium and I think the 6th grade campus needed new HVAC equipment, a new roof or something like that. Yeah, we need a roof on the schools. And so, if 355 is what it costs, and what it's projected to cost, for those items, I'm going to vote for it. And then I'm going to go back to you guys, I'm going to say, make it cost less. Find a way to make it cost less. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have some questions,
Mr. Anker's point, we did not talk about this, but for the record, my husband sells buses. Not school in particular, but I have access to those numbers. I know my husband sells buses, and I know the bus dealer. And I spoke with both of them today. And just for the record, we have buses in this line. I'm not mistaken. So the cost, the increase, escalation if you will, from 2020 to 2024 is 30%. That's gigantic. A school bus before 2020 would have been approximately $90,000. Now that same school bus is approximately $130,000. These aren't hard numbers. These aren't made up. These aren't what ifs. These are hard numbers, factual numbers. I think the idea that we would go for the smaller bond, and this comes to Mr. Granger's second point, splitting the bond, I do feel that it's a bad idea, only because I consider myself a fairly informed person and try to be informed. But when I was setting up things for kids' education
this past semester, there were two options on the screen, and I did something really dumb and chose the lesser expensive option. The problem was Gary didn't have a meal plan, so Gary could not eat, and that was because I didn't do my research, and I didn't go with the more expensive plan, because I wanted to be fiscally responsible. I thought, I appreciate that. The third thing is a situation I know of, and Mr. Randy was talking about building, the other elementary school. I feel very important because we've had situations where classes needed to be, rooms needed to be provided for extra instruction. And when that room was provided, it made a huge difference in the grade levels of classes that it was provided for. And I thought that is so important. We cannot just say, oh, well, we don't need another elementary school right now. It needs to be, we needed it yesterday, really, because of the growth that's coming. And to be able to do that, had we not built Pleasant View, which was in the previous line, we would not have been able to make that happen. And that's a huge thing for kids. To have a place to go, number one, and make a positive impact on the existing class. And that's about it. I think I appreciate what you did. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
So I think that the previous speakers have kind of covered all of the major topics. I just have one question to come back to. Kayla, what you have mentioned about including the public in those meetings, I'm curious what your thought is on how to do that to keep it productive and successfully rolling through. And I only say that because I know what it's like to be in a classroom with lots of people and trying to coordinate all of the groups and all the talking. And in my mind, have we had just an open door situation for that committee? We know in advance, like we're scheduling times, we're on my calendar to make it there and make it a point to be there because I'm on that committee and it's specifically requested. Whereas, public participation sometimes like, oh, I got this, I can't make it work. I'm just curious. I would like an idea if that's something that the public is asking for. How do we improve that process? Well, we could ask Joshua how they do theirs, because Joshua ISD does allow the public to attend their long-range meetings. But I think that like a board meeting, we have the public here at a board meeting, but they're not participating unless they sign up for public participation. The board is conducting business and the public is just observing. And that's all that the public wanted to do was observe those meetings, not as a committee member, but as an observer. But do you feel like that the meeting, the way that you were able to freely discuss things and give true opinion and true insight, had there been people watching like this? Like, this is a very important setting. Like, this is, to me, not as fluid as that meeting was. So, those meetings. I guess that's my whole issue with things, is that every governmental agency has its rules and procedures and all the things, and there are certain things that's how it's done so that business can get accomplished, I guess is my point to that. So that's what I reference back to. I don't think it would have been as productive to have everyone here. I feel like the district did a really good job putting all of the information that's discussed out onto the website and different channels like that so that the public could feel included. Do you not feel like that was enough? I would have liked for them to at least been recorded or live streamed for the public. And I think that would be something to ask Joshua ISD of how they set up their long-range meetings and how they include the public in theirs. It can be done. Other districts do it. Fourth ISD does as well, Joshua ISD, Burleson. So we can maybe ask those districts how they run their meetings. I could be speaking incorrectly here because I don't know 100%, but did Joshua's lawn pass that they just tried to go for? No. Okay. So even though the public was there,
even though the long-range planning committee, I have no idea, I've not looked into Joshua at all, I'm purely shooting off the cuff here, but to me, that doesn't necessarily spell a great outcome for Joshua ISD having all of that public participation there, or does not. I don't know, if we're comparing, it's not really apples to apples, because Joshua is not us. That's where I'm getting at with that, so.
Passing the lines up.
Thank you.
It's not everybody's goal. Why do you
Sorry, chair meeting, I was part of the long range planning committee, and I have lots of experience in commercial projects, in oil and gas field, building huge infrastructure, and that's something that not a lot of people understand. And looking at the things that are proposed and on the things that over 7% of the long range planning committee agreed that Godley ISD needs. Those things are not going to make any sense. We're not able to do it cheaper than we are right now. And for those of you that don't know, it takes, I want to say, 2 years to build a middle school from start to finish. So it's not in a year, 2 years, we're full, now we have to build a school. So all of these things have to be done in advance with prior planning, and the more that you can accomplish at one time, the more money you save. The economy scale. If you've already got a crane out installing an HVAC in one school, you just roll it down the road, you save money because you're not having to call it back. All of those kinds of things take place when you have a broad encompassing project. So all of those things that are on the bond package, none of those needs are just going to disappear. And we're going to need another year. We're going to need lost by the middle school. We're going to need buses. All of those things, they're not really needs. But they're going to get more expensive along the way. Along the way, it's going to put more pressure on the existing infrastructure, which Godley has done a very good job of maintaining and keeping some of the old infrastructure that we have still functioning. But we can't depend on that forever. So I would just encourage everybody, do a little research. Don't just automatically look at things and go, that's crazy. That's a crazy number. It is a crazy number. But that's what things cost, just like Amy said, 30% plus the increase. The construction world is the same, 30 to 50% over pre-COVID and now. So these numbers are not inflated for anybody's personal gain. Everything that's in that bond, 70% of us said, hey, we looked at the numbers, we looked at all the information that was not presented to the general public, which I think Kayla has a good point. Let's live stream those meetings. I don't think you can do those long-term planning meetings productively, open to the general public, because there was a whole lot of workshop, like listing, here's the needs that we have, prioritize these. Okay, now that we have this, out of that list, let's prioritize again, things that would not be conducive to just voting for it. But I think live streaming it to where people could see all of the research that was presented, all of the workshopping that we did do, and applying these things. That's not.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Anyone else? Thank you all for speaking, serving on that community issue.
While they're looking for those slides, it was going to be the same information that was presented to you last time. It's going to be one last chance to look at it based on where we left off. What one single proposition would look like at 355 million. And then, as was discussed last time, we have an option of what two propositions would look like. So we'll find those, we'll put those up process. Other than that, we're just here to answer your questions and walk with you.
Can I ask a question before we do that? So I felt like we have a pretty good cross-section of the committee here. Is there anyone that was on the committee that feels passionately one way or the other on splitting it into two props that has not spoken? Splitting it into two props versus keeping it as one? Or is there anyone that feels passionately enough against two to speak? Because I'm feeling like the majority is against splitting it into. Can I get, not a offense?
Can you stand up if you're against splitting it into? Okay, now I'll sit down, please, and then if you're okay with it being a two, can you please stand up? If you were okay with it.
Thank y'all.
Hey, where's, I think one proposal is better. However, I think the community might like the idea of those two options. I know that we don't want that, but I'm just thinking of the community support. And I feel like they would see that as they give us options, and they didn't just give us one. So I know while we as a committee feel it's way better to do one, I'm on the same page. Like I feel like it's better to have one. I also feel like if you're going to work consumer singularly, you're going to say yes to that, you're going to say yes to 350. It's not that big a difference. However, I think from an option standpoint, to empower those for an option, I think they like that in the district. However, there's a downside to that. And you have to work out for us to try to educate. You vote one, vote for both, kind of thing. So that's my input in terms of community support.
So Jeff,
Yes, sir.
before you leave, sir. So I hear what you're describing, but I'm also going to ask, do you not believe that the long-range committee is a good cross-section of our community?
I do. That's a great point. I felt like that last time, but I know our bottom was way bigger, and I feel like we did do a good job listening. Like that amount was too high, they felt like, and so we went back to the drawing board and went back for a lot less. I know if you were to take the amount, I mean, it was brought up earlier, divided into three, and it's a 3-year, but it's really not a 3-year plan, it's a 3 to 5 year plan, and there's escalation that has been factored in last month, so it's a very unfair quick math equation that was brought up earlier. However, I do think that we did a good job listening to the community to be presented with such a small amount of community. I do.
Yeah, I don't want to sound argumentative with you, but I did feel like the committee was a broad cross-section of our community. And if those representatives here are saying one problem instead of two, I'm just listening a little bit, I agree, maybe the rest of the community on a different wavelength than our long-range committee.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody else has any input from folks that they talk to, neighbors, people around the committee that would like, or around the community that would like the idea too. I don't know. I mean, I know we're pretty steadfast on wanting one, but that's just my feel that just folks just like options, regardless of what it is. They just like to feel empowered with their vote and to have options. I do think that, but I also think that you would be responsible. That the committee did a very responsible job presenting 350 and had a good pulse in the community. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One thing I wanted to about splitting it is sometimes you will get individuals that maybe don't support the bigger amount, but they'll give a vote to something because they want to say they contributed to getting something for the district. So I worry about splitting that because the lower amount might be more appealing. So they're giving you something, but they're not willing to give you some of those things that I think are the bigger proposition are what needs to come first. And I was asking, I wasn't sure exactly how it's listed on the ballot. So if someone walks in to vote, I didn't know that it's specifically listed on there, or how that, when they go into it.
If the board proposes to split it, the larger would be just generally, it would be pretty broad, pretty vague. smaller would specifically say renovations to the sixth-grade campus, high school of 20, additions and renovations to the ag. So the smaller one would be
So
very specific.
someone walking in that doesn't know fully what that larger amount encompasses might be more willing to vote for the smaller, which is great, but you just don't want them to overlook what that bigger amount is. So that's kind of what my reasoning on and what some of the individuals I've spoken to do worry about the splitting part is it's harder to get the details in there versus that, especially when you just have somebody walking in and looking about it and maybe doesn't know all the details.
Thank you.
And I don't think we've done the proposition in the past, have we, here in Godley? So that's going to be a hurdle, I think, mentally for a lot of voters. If we do that, or you choose to do that, I think we're really educated and get the word out how it works. Also agree with Mr. Fancher, maybe put the pull with the lasers on the one proposition. The other thing is, let's don't be like this.
Thank you. Well, give you a look.
Okay, so this is, if we're a single project, everything included, this includes every project from the committee recommendation of 355 plus $2 million for land, which was recommended by the administration. So this would be actually a total long haul of almost 365. And then we have two slides that are broken down if you'd like to see them separate.
Pause here just a moment. We will.
I have a question. So the last meeting that was 355 million, now it's 365 million. Do you know what the other 10, 11 million is for?
The extra 10 million is for the land purchases that are recommended by the administration. So that's one additional component added above and beyond what the committee recommended. So the committee recommendation projects should be included.
That's 10 million.
And I'll be with the more conservative schedule timeline, or at least the ballpark of the schedule that we thought it might take with our current capacity, with our conservative projections.
So we'll try to get as much into the next 4 years as we can, but there will be one or two projects that has to push out beyond that, essentially to a 2030
Just to be,
but it all depends on the rate of
depending on rate, it will be 5 to 6 years.
Can we see the split option?
Okay, so this is what the projects would be included in Prop A if we were to split it based on the discussion last time. And this was, if you recall, every individual project received a vote and 70% or higher. These particular projects received 100% of the individual vote. In Prop B, here on the next slide, and I'll go back to this one if you'd like. The percentages you see there by individual projects, but then in the end, collectively, we took a vote on the total bond package, and that also received 100% approval. So that's the two different percentages that we've been talking about back and forth, are individual projects versus total bond proposal. And we, based on discussion last time, this is what was being looked at for a second proposition.
So I noticed the contingency of 10 mil is all in Prop A. What does that do? Obviously, just from a pure number of options, does not include the contingency of Prop B. So is that the prudent thing to do, or is it prudent to split that contingency?
I could see it being split if you like. There is contingency within each individual project budget as well. So I think the thought behind putting the bond contingency in the larger prop is obviously it's covering a lot more projects, a lot more variables, and so if something were to come up, like needing a wastewater treatment plant for the elementary school or something like that, there would be funds to cover that. Which these are much more specific. So perhaps the project contingency built in would be very projects would be sufficient, but I would be on board just as well as this.
So for education purposes, there was some needed legislation, and you have some clear property both passed. When you need the extra funding over in Block B, came across, or they kept these things.
I don't think that would be an issue.
I'm sorry?
I don't think that would be an issue to use the contingency for any projects associated with the bond.
I think we just want to make sure the contingency was in the two biggest projects, which was the elementary and, of course, the middle school renovation and addition. Of course, because the middle school is the biggest project in there. We wanted to make sure we did get into the same position that we've been in for the last few years.
Yeah, my concern is if they had to be treated as two separate complete entities, then you're leaving this particular pile with not as much contingency.
Particularly with the ballot language for Prop A being more general, or you can say the words better than I do, but it's not a list of projects. It is more general. So that does give you more flexibility as well. Whereas if it were in Prop B, that Prop B is listed for these specific projects. So you might be a little more restricted if it were in Prop B.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Lori? Thank you.
I have some questions that I needed clarification on for the proposition language. I'm not sure who to ask those questions. Who would be the person to ask regarding proposition language? Okay. She kind of touched on it a little bit, but proposition A, when it says for that language, it's like she said, it's more general. So the district was sharing specific goals for Proposition A, but the legal language allows for that bond money from Proposition A to be spent on any facilities. Is that correct?
No, I think it just has, I believe, just on the Proposition A projects.
Well, like she had mentioned that it's generic in what it lists for Proposition A, so that 287 or whatever it's broken out in, that can be used for any project because it's generic ballot language. Is that correct?
For these projects that we're listing.
So you could not use Prop A funds for any kind of special purpose project like an athletic facility that falls under the special purpose provisions, or a standalone performing arts center or an auditorium or something like that. You could not use Prop A funds for any project that would be required to be put in a separate proposal. But your other issue, and I'm the community engagement person, your other issue is you promised to your community that you're going to spend money on these projects. You published these projects and promoted these projects. So the elected leadership of the board, it's their responsibility to make sure that that money stays in that. But you are right, and the community planners only on general purpose type projects, not open auditorium. If you have a lot of property money. And then my other question is, the order calling the bond election is the document that I'm speaking about. When it says without limit as to rate or amount, the district can't guarantee the actual tax rate in 40 years from now. We can't speak to what boards further on down the road are going to do. So I believe that's the legal reason for having that verbiage in there. Is that correct? In the proposition language in the document order calling the bond election, it says that it can raise the tax rate without limit as to rate or amount. It's my understanding that the legal reason for having that language in there is because the district can't guarantee what
future boards would do with the tax rate. So they can't guarantee a tax rate, say, for 40 years. We can't guarantee what a future board's going to do and what the tax rate will do in 40 years. So that's my understanding. I just am asking if I'm understanding that correctly.
You're right, we don't know what they're going to do. Now, we can't go above 50 cents unless they change the law, which they're not. But yeah, that would be good. I can find out exactly what that is. The strength of it.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question, it says that this tax can be collected on all taxable property. I just wanted those that are over 65 to understand that while they would not be voting for an additional tax for themselves, it would potentially tax those around them. And that's, in my understanding, why the legal language says to be collected on all taxable property. My next question is that, I think Aubrey touched on this, but the additional 10 million is for land. So last month we did talk about 355, now it's 365, and that additional 10 million is for land. I just wanted to clarify that for the public. And also, I didn't see the voter information document included in this bond order. So I'm just going off the interest from the last year's bond. But last year, the 889 million, the interest was estimated to be 898 million for a total of 1.78 billion, with that interest rate being calculated at 4.5%. Can we expect a similar interest rate for this bond amount? Have we looked into what the interest rate would be on this bond? Do you know what that is? Okay, if they're a little bit higher than that, do you know what the average interest rate is right now for bonds?
Because it does depend on how many bonds are out there, because in the entire state. So he hasn't really given us an amount.
Do you know what that is, Kayla, since you had the last bond? Do you have that number?
I know that the last bond for 2023, with the interest rate being 4.5%.
The current one, the one you're asking of Rich.
No, I'm asking because that document wasn't included in our bond order, so I don't know what the interest rate is.
That's why the information you just gave wasn't included in our bond order either. Where'd you get that?
I looked at the bond order from last year. I'm talking about last year's proposition. The bond order following an election, it was this current bond is missing this voter information document, and so that's why I'm asking for interest rate, because this page is missing out of here that was in the bond order for last year.
Is that page something that comes after we call it bond? Possibly?
I don't know. I wasn't a part of it last year. I just was going off what I found on our website, our bond order from last year.
One reason it wouldn't be in there is because we're not going to be able to sell these bonds for, it might be more than a year, just because of our capacity. We're going to have to wait for our capacity to catch up. But we're still going to have to get a lot of this work done as far as the planning and the designing and that sort of thing.
You know what the interest rate is on the bonds, so they go up for sale. And then you have the option to approve or decline every time.
And it depends on how many we go up to 20 million versus 100 million, we go up at a rate, and that sort of thing too.
Any other questions? I'll consider a motion now.
So, before I make a motion, I'm going to make a statement. When I came in here today, I thought I was going to go with 2 propositions. And that was in an effort to feel as though I listened to the public with our last election that did not pass. But after hearing the committee and seeing the information that was given tonight and hearing all of the passionate answers behind keeping it as 1, I will now make a motion. I will make a motion to approve an order calling a bond election in the district on May 4th and submitting a single proposition to the voters of the district as presented and recommended.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Marissa, a second by Craig. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, sir, I do want to make a comment, Chris. So, up until Monday, I had my thought process on a single prop. I did considerable digging into bonds that were called over the past 2 years, 22, 23, 4 different elections. Looked at all of the variety of dollar amounts, size of the districts, whether they had one primarily focused on a single crop, multi-crop. Most of the instances where there was multi-crop were primarily because of where it's required by the state, an auditorium, an athletic complex, something of that nature. Primarily, I'll call it school buildings, or really lumped together as school buildings. There were, I believe it was 4 instances in the past 4 elections where there were districts that chose to create multiple props for school buildings. Those were primarily focused in areas where, for whatever reason, that district decided to put a new high school or whatever the facility was in a single prop. So I very soon, after that, looking at all that data, I'm like, okay, kind of makes sense. We're kind of segmenting, okay, let's put this in multiple props. But, like Marissa, I really feel strongly that the cross-section of the community that came in to be part of our long-range committee is telling us something, and that's important to me. So, again, I'm very, that's why I'm seconding this for a single prop. But I would just like to communicate again, there's data that supports breaking it apart. But again, that may not be right for our community. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second, and now vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 5-1.
I just wanted to clarify, purely my reason for voting no was because I was not comfortable calling this bond when the public was prohibited from attending the meetings. That was something that was very important to me.
AD will consider approving the notice of appointment of election judge, the Godley ISD bond election, and Godley ISD trustee election, placed 1, 2, and 3 in the district on May 4th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the notice of appointment of election judge and early voting clerks for Godley ISD election and Godley ISD trustee election for places 1, 2, and 3 in the district on May 4th as presented.
Also,
A motion by Terry, a second by Krista. Is there any discussion?
I just had a question. Do we know who the judge is going to be? Okay, thank you.
Pam, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. AD will consider the joint election contract of the City of Godley for the Godley ISD School Board Trustee election in places 1, 2, and 3, Godley ISD bond election in the district on May 4th, 2024.
I have a question. So the election day is going to be the only day that we are having a joint election with the city. Is that correct?
Yes, we're going to share a polling location. All early voting will be done at ours directly.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion for the board to approve the joint election contract with the City of Godley for Godley ISD School Board Trustee election, places 1, 2, 3, and the Godley ISD bond election in the district on May 4th, 2024, as presented in the record.
I'll second.
A motion by Craig, a second by Krista. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. The time is now 7:27 p.m. and the board will move into closed session. Closed session items, this is closed sessions pursuant to the following sections. Five 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.073, discussing negotiated contracts for prospective gifts.
Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it.
Thank you all.
No, we see. So, maybe two also.